By popular demand, Debbie Reynolds Consulting is now offering executive briefings on emerging data privacy risks and how companies can avoid them. To learn more, visit the executive briefings page on my website. Thank you. The personal views expressed by our podcast guests are their own and are not legal advice or official statements by their organizations. Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues with industry leaders around the world with information that businesses need to know. I have a very special guest on the show today, Mojisola Abi Sowemimo. She is a data privacy expert and an AI governance expert. Welcome.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to be on this show today.
I was excited when I saw you pop up on my timeline. I was like, oh my goodness, this is somebody I don't know. How do I not know this woman?
But I know about you. I follow you and I follow your trends in your podcast. So I'm a huge fan. I'm glad to be on.
Well, your profile caught my attention, obviously, for privacy people. And I like to hear privacy folks that are talking about AI governance. And that's something that you speak about quite a bit. But your journey, how did you get into privacy? And what was that journey like?
It's a great question. Thank you. So my journey to privacy is something I find really exciting because when I think about it, I get excited all over again. My background is in process improvement, project management, business process improvement. And the more I worked on projects that involved personal data, the more I saw that there were these different hurdles to be crossed or covered whenever any process that involved personal data was being talked about or being improved upon. And sometimes you'd have the team say, oh, this project is involving these processes, and you have to reach out to the risk department or the risk management team. So, and I just got the curiosity stirred up in me to know why these extra steps. And then I got to find out about data privacy and why these processes have to be extra secure to make sure that we don't have unnecessary access to personal data and all that. So then I said, okay, I need to know more about this types of processes and niche. So I got involved in the GDPR. My first IAPP certification was in EU certification, which covers the GDPR. And the more I learned about it, the more I got intrigued about it. And that way I was able to cross over from my process improvement background and project management background to data privacy. So sometimes when I work on data privacy projects, my business process improvement lenses come up and I'm thinking about how to streamline the process or what have you. So that's been my journey.
That's so cool. I think
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people, because privacy wasn't really its own industry. It wasn't its own segment for a really long time,
Yeah.
outside of people who were doing a lot of cross-border data transfer. So the fact
Yes.
that I see so many people interested in this field of study, I think is really fascinating. Also, I feel, and I don't know how you feel,
Mm.
to me, one of the things that really got me interested in it. Well, I have a selfish reason. So I want to know what my rights are. So that's how I got into it. I'm like, wait a minute, like what are my rights? But then also I feel like at the end of the day, in addition to helping companies, you're actually protecting people. So to me, that really made me feel good about doing this work. But I want your thoughts.
Yes. I agree with you on that. And the fact that people's personal data, like I say to myself and I tell audiences that personal data today is the new gold. There's so much you can do with someone's personal data. And when you're entrusted with that responsibility, you have to be accountable for it. I like to work with organizations to ensure that they are accountable for the personal data that they have in their care, in their trust. And I see, for example, when you talk about the privacy notice that the companies have on their website, I see that as like a love letter or promissory note to their customers and their clients about what they plan to do with their personal data, and they need to be held to standard to it. I reconcile with you, or I agree with you on the fact that it also covers administering people's rights to them, making them aware of what they can do to ask organizations for example, what do you do with my data? What part of my data do you have in your custody? Holding organizations accountable for that involves developing a process behind doors So that way, when that opportunity comes for them, they're able to come out and say, yes, we do this and this to data, and this is what you can do if you want to know more. So I do agree with you on that. That the ability to give people the responsibility or the ability to exercise their rights. Yes.
I have never heard anyone call it a love letter. I think if companies thought of it that way, I think it would be easier for them because really
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that the difference now is that before companies felt like as long as I gave you a product or service, I didn't owe you anything else beyond that. So I think what these laws and regulations and also consumer pressure is happening. It's like, hey, our data is very valuable, right?
Right.
I want to do business with you, and I want to
Mm.
know that doing business with you is not going to create more risk or more harm for me. And then for me, on the business side, it should be more of a bottom line issue because customers who don't feel comfortable with companies, they either don't give them accurate data, right?
Right.
Or to protect themselves, or they don't, or they move somewhere else. So we're seeing that a lot, especially around, like, for example, many years ago, Apple had their app transparency thing where they were like, they opted a lot of people out of advertising. They had to opt in. And actually, Apple had like their biggest quarter ever right after they did that. So to me,
Mm.
I feel like that's telling the marketplace, hey, people really care about their
Yeah.
data and they want to be protected.
Right.
Not just the fact that you can send them a fair credit reporting notice and when you have a breach, it's like it
Mhm.
goes farther than that. What do you
It
think?
does. I agree with you. It does go further than that. And now, companies' ability to demonstrate their ability to secure people's personal data is more of a competitive advantage now today because people are paying attention. They're paying attention based on the different news that are going around, like breaches happening around and what having the data in dark market. It's making people pay attention. So they want to know what you're doing with the data. So having that ability to be transparent about what you do with your data, be accountable about what you're doing with the data, helps to build that brand loyalty among consumers. So that way they feel comfortable to do business with you because they know what you're doing with your data and they trust you that you will handle it with care and protect it as much as you should do. So I do agree with you that it would help. It does build competitive advantage. It builds brand loyalty, and it also helps to strengthen the brand because your brand really there's no value you can place on a brand. There's no value to it because you can't quantify it. Rather, there's so much more that to get from your brand because in the future, as you grow your business, data might not speak for you, but your brand quality will speak for you. The integrity that you've built over time with your consumers will speak for you, speak volumes for you.
Very good. I want to talk with you about something that is coming very apparent to me. I've been talking about it for a while, but I think now that companies, especially so many of them, are trying to rush into implementing artificial intelligence, they're starting to reach this issue. So, one side is a lot of companies feel like, well, let's rush into AI. We don't want to hinder innovation, so we don't want any laws or regulation around AI, which that part I understand. The part that people don't understand, and I want your thoughts here, is that when these companies rush into AI, they start and they're thinking, oh, I don't have any obligation, there are no regulations there. And then they hit the data privacy wall. Right, because it's like, okay, now the thing that you're doing with data, regardless of what you call the technology, you're still handling someone's personal
Yes,
information, and you still have
exactly.
obligations there, and so I think
Right.
that's the part that companies, I feel like, get wrong about AI, especially when we're seeing certain jurisdictions trying to say, "We don't want governance because we don't want to curb innovation in this space." It is difficult, in my view, historically, for innovation truly to take off if there aren't guardrails. So, if there were not, we actually had a podcast guest, the commissioner of New Zealand, the
Yeah,
privacy
I listened to that
agency.
podcast. It was a great podcast.
Yeah, but I love what she said, which was the reason why we can go fast in cars because of brakes. And I was
Yes.
like, wow, I didn't even think of it that way. I didn't even think of that way. So it's like
Right,
this the innovation and the speed that you want with that innovation, in order for it to go fast, you have to think about those safety things.
right.
But what are your thoughts?
Yes, and I completely agree with you. I believe that that's where organizations get it wrong, and the reason I say so is because people have this assumption that because people are the ones behind the organizations, that's why I said people, because they believe that because they're using artificial intelligence, they don't need to follow the normal protocol of developing a privacy framework for their operations, which is completely wrong. And it's wrong because you are dealing with personal data. You use personal data to train your AI models. Your output, be it a product or service that you're deploying AI for, is going to be using, interacting with personal data somehow, some way. Developing a framework internally before you deploy the systems out. It ensures that you have already a structured governance structure in place that helps to ensure that everyone is held accountable and that you're transparent in your dealings. Take, for example, without AI being saturated now, before the advent of AI, where we had normal business processes, we've been advocating for organizations to have privacy programs, right? And the privacy programs, what they do is to help you to create a framework where your use of personal data is documented, you classify your data, analyze your risk, identify, analyze your risk, right? Ensure that you mitigate them, for a process for you to ensure that risks are identified and handled in a timely manner. And also you implement the privacy by design principle. And then also you ensure that you have the regulatory mapping going on. These are basically a very high overview of the privacy pillars that organizations have to have in place before the advent of AI. Now, with AI, it doesn't take away that framework. It only emphasizes the fact that you need to make sure that this framework is robust enough to handle the additional attacks that are coming on board, right? And you should notice most of these AI regulations and laws that are in place today, they're emphasizing similar things in the event that you need to be able to ensure that you identify your AI systems, how you're using AI. And the reason for this is because everyone has to be held accountable. The organization has to be held accountable for the data that has been entrusted to you. How are you using it? Do you have consent for the data you're using? This is the time that you cannot push aside privacy framework or programs. You need to have one. And we're not talking about, oh, the EU AI Act. There has to be a governance structure internally. So that way, the organization is demonstrating transparency. When you have your AI models drift or hallucinate, there's a track that you can follow to identify and rectify them. Even the goal here is to actually go ahead and prevent them from happening rather than be reactive, right? Being proactive rather than being reactive, right? It always goes a long way to ensure that there's less incidences and you have a monitoring for all this. So if anything, this is the time to ensure that there are enough structures in place to ensure that you did demonstrate responsible AI. It's all about building that trust in your product, in your organization, with your consumers and your clients. And the AI regulations and laws that we see this today, they're all emphasizing the same things, really. Basically, are you monitoring your use cases? Are you evaluating your impact to individuals? Are you able to manage complaints? Do you have a structure in place to be able to ensure that you're able to demonstrate compliance with all these requirements by the different AI rules and regulations? And for the privacy office, I think this is an exciting time to be in privacy because we in on the privacy team, we are like translators of risk today between the law teams and the technology teams because an engineer, you can ask an engineer to develop an AI governance structure. I mean, they could give it it could be a good attempt at doing it, but they're not able to see the different facets that a privacy specialist can see with experience and with understanding the requirements for the organization. This goes beyond the legal team. It goes beyond the technical team. It's a privacy function. And that's why I always recommend that organizations, when they're trying to develop an AI privacy governance structure, an AI governance structure, that they don't ignore the privacy part of it, because it's a very relevant part. It's the part that ensures that you have your assessments in place for your vendor, your AI risk assessments. It also helps to ensure that your AI regulation ready, in the sense that you're in compliance with what the EU AI Act has, if you have jurisdiction in the EU, and also other emerging US state privacy AI laws. This is a function for the privacy team. The privacy team pulls that and works with other teams, collaborates with other teams, with the legal team, with the technology team, and other teams to ensure that everyone's accountable for their different tasks and aspects of it. It takes a whole village, but the privacy team has that unique role that you can't just delegate to another team. That's my perspective on that. And that's what I strongly advocate for when I'm reaching out to clients and providing them with recommendations on moving forward with the AI governance.
I agree with that. I think the change that has to happen in organizations is that they really need that person in privacy to be that communicator that can
Right.
help bridge a lot of the silos in the organization, because we're all using data and we're using it in different ways. And someone just working on maybe one discrete project may not understand the risk that they may be creating somewhere else, or they don't understand, like, for example, let's say there are teams that have segments of data about a person, but then you combine it together and now you have a problem, right? Where none of those teams saw that problem because that problem didn't exist in their silo. But now together, the organization is accountable. They can't just say accounting did this and marketing did that. It's like, no, well, the organization has to be accountable. So you need to be able to see all the different areas that you're handling data and what that like downstream risk will be. I want your thoughts. Like, what's happening in the world right now in privacy or tech that's concerning you? Like something that you see, like, oh my gosh, like, oh, this is gonna be an issue coming down the line. What do you think?
Right. I see a couple of things, to be honest, and I'll take them one by one. The one thing I see that's a bit concerning is when I see when what you mentioned earlier on about companies that believe that they don't need to have an AI governance structure in place. I just chuckle, but not in a good way with that, because it's like you see, it's like you can tell that something bad's gonna happen. You just don't know when it's gonna happen, but something bad's gonna happen. If you feel like you don't need to have a governance structure in place, or you don't understand that creating that structure today is not only going to help you to ensure that you are in compliance with all these AI laws and emerging ones that are coming up, it also helps you to be able to understand what you need to do to be able to improve upon what you have today, right? And when you have a structure in place, it's demonstrating accountability. It's helping you to identify risk, because most of the pitfalls that we have today in the deployment of AI systems is not really in the technology, but mostly in the governance of it, right? For example, recently there was a case about AI powered assistance for technology that doctors used in surgery. For some reason, there was a model drift, and the AI system did not provide the right information to the doctors, and there were botched surgeries. Now, if you look at this, system had an AI drift, and this could have been avoided. There had been enough testing before deployment. AI governance covers all this. You create a structure in place where before any AI system is being deployed to production, there's enough testing and there are enough guardrails in place to ensure that there's human oversight and maybe the steps that to design control that can be put in place to ensure that such situations don't happen. Now, think about the consequences of it happening and think about what could have been done to prevent it. Having a robust privacy governance with accountability systems and enough system controls in place could have provided or could have prevented that situation from occurring. Now, having botched surgery is not a good thing. It has a lot of implications, not only in the medical team, on the patients, on the technology that was used, on so many factors. So if we look on the bigger frame, in the bigger picture, if you look at the fact that this is a causative effect of this, then you realize the importance of it. Then you think about it that this needs to be improved upon. And what even makes me even more scared today is the fact that agentic AI is actually being deployed, which is even worse than generative AI. Worse in the sense that agentic AI not only provides you with solutions, it makes decisions, and it can interact with databases. It can do so much more than generative AI can do. And the question now is, how many organizations have a robust governance structure in place, have enough accountability structural framework in place to ensure that these agentic AIs, when deployed, are not going about messing things up and causing catastrophic effects on businesses? Now that gets me so very worried. And it's something that it's easily solvable. It's solvable because there's steps to follow to ensure that you have a process in place to avoid that from happening. Not only are there steps in place for you to follow, there are the different framework, you name it, that you can follow to ensure that you prevent these agentic AIs from causing catastrophic effects. There are also internal processes that need to be developed as well. So it's a process that I highly recommend organizations not rushing out to deploy agentic AIs before they do their due diligence of developing a process in place where everyone has an accountability. It will be held accountable for their different parts. Identifying these processes, identifying owners to them, developing that structure, having continuous monitoring in place, ensuring that you have enough testing, and so many other factors are very, very essential and are not optional today. They're very mandatory. And I hope that organizations wake up to the fact that this is something that needs to be done. We need to be concerned more about that than deploying these AI systems into production. If we can handle that and then make sure that we have that in place before we deploy these AI systems, that would go a very long way to not only ensure that there are no negative consequences, but it helps to demonstrate trust and confidence in your consumers that will be the overall, when I say impacted by the deployment of these systems.
I have a thought that I wanna run past you. And so
Okay.
I've been thinking about this for quite a while now. And I think, I also work on Internet of Things as well. And this is an issue that has come up in Internet of Things. And now I see that's been turbocharged in AI governance. And so, and your example about someone using AI in a surgical fashion and that the drift of the model, this is the issue. So, the issue that I have, and I want your thoughts, is that I think the way that people have traditionally thought about tools when they came into the enterprise is that someone would do an assessment, they would decide what people need to do with the tool, they would like set it and then forget it, right? And
Right.
so the problem here, and the same problem we have with IoT, is that the thing that you bought 6 months ago is different today than it was 6 months ago. And so
Right.
you can't just set it and forget it. So that example about drift that you gave is like, okay, in olden times, when the tool that you had really didn't change. Maybe let's say for instance you had a application. I used to do a lot of enterprise installation, implementation, things like that. And so typically like a tool changed maybe majorly, maybe 3 years. Okay.
Right.
So, but now we're having tools, especially now they're connected to the internet, they're updated over the air, especially these AI models, like they're changing in weeks,
Yeah. Yeah.
weeks and months, and they're adding
Right.
new features. And also, in
Yes.
addition to that, these companies now they're collecting data or they're creating data that was never created before. So the
Mhm.
way that they thought about governance before is not sufficient for today. But I want your thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree with you. So the way they're thinking about governance is different from what we have today because of the different technologies that we have today, the modern technology. And so, for example, to handle the model drift, in previous organizational governance structure, you probably could have had continuous monitoring done once in 3 months or once in 6 months. Now, continuous monitoring, I don't want to say I want it to be weekly or bi-weekly, to be honest with you, because there's so many changes happening so fast that it's so difficult to catch up with it if you don't have a robust program in place. And to prevent any negative impacts of any drift, any model drift, what would be recommended now would be having a continuous monitoring process in place, a robust one, where no one can drop the loop, drop the ball. And to do that, you need to develop a process that'll be a closed loop, so that you have more than one or two persons, more than one or two teams responsible and in being part of the process to ensure that the process that you have in place, the AI system you have in place, is being monitored. And that will be a collaborative effort, not just from the privacy team, would involve the technology team as well, and all the teams that were involved in the deployment and the creation of that AI system, because they're the ones that have that information on what the baseline was before the deployment. They're the ones that have the data, that receive the data on a regular basis on the trends and on the updates that are required for that AI system, and many other factors without going to technical parts. So this collaborative effort has involved its specialties. So that way, the continuous monitoring process that you have in place is robust to identify any update, any feature of it, any change or update that has to be implemented on that AI system. Developing the continuous monitoring process is actually a very robust process that we're just talking on a very high level now, but it's a process that shouldn't be neglected or overlooked, because what happens is the AI model drifts and then it's not performing as it should perform. And then that would have a negative impact on the deliverable you're expecting from that system. And if you now have an agentic AI model, it's not only just going to use that outcome and give you that information, it would use that information it gathers to update other databases. It might be interacting with other systems as well. So you have the effect, the negative or the wrong information being transmitted into other databases, being shared with other systems. And these other databases and systems would use that information to make their own decisions as well. So you'd have that's why I said earlier on, it's a catastrophic effect if you went ahead and did that. So if you can look at what could happen and what you need to do to prevent it from happening, you would more likely do what you need to do now, because correct the damage that will be done take far more resources, more in every aspect, financial, time, specialties and professionals to rectify that damage being done. And also the brand at the end of the day. How can you redeem your brand from anything negative that could occur from that? That takes a lot of work, because the outlets are ready to release any news impact. The AI system had this had a default or had a problem and caused this and this negative impact. The money you spend redeeming your brand, the money you spend rectifying the problems, God forbid anything fatal happens, it's not quantifiable. It's a lot. So that's what I'll recommend in your scenario, to have a complete, robust, continuous monitoring exercise, testing also, and also before this AI systems are able to make decisions, especially if you have an agentic AI system, I would recommend, based on the scenario that you have in place, you identify, is it okay for this agentic AI to go ahead and update this database or to update the system? I recommend having controls in place that there's human oversight. Before it goes on to the next step, there should be human oversight to ensure that this is accurate, you can proceed. I really recommend that human oversight. A lot of AI regulations actually emphasize on that as well.
That's true. That's true. I have always been concerned because I feel like there are harms that can happen to people based
Right.
on AI systems for which there is no adequate redress for the person. Like you're
Right.
talking about these bot surgeries that people have had. Can't unbot the surgery, really, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think, those types of things are very important. I would like for you to travel with me to the philosophical plane, and I
Okay.
wanted to ask your thoughts about human in the loop. And so this is what concerns me about that term. It just never really sat well with me, and I understand what people mean when they say that. But to me, when you say a human in the loop, it does not communicate the person's right or nor their responsibility in the loop, right? So
Right.
it doesn't that's like saying, okay, people are in a car. So are you a passenger in the car? Are you driving the car? Do you own the car? You know what I'm saying? So I think
Yeah.
human in the loop for me, when I hear that, it's like almost like fingernails on a chalkboard. So I'm like, well, what does that mean exactly? Because some people are like, oh yeah, we do human in the loop. Like whose rights are you asserting? But what are your thoughts?
Mhm. You have human in the loop, you have human on the loop, and you you have it's another one again. So I think that because AI is picking everyone's interest now, using terminologies that are quite vague will not serve us well at this particular time because one of the requirements of deploying AI systems is transparency. I think we should also be transparent in the terminologies that we use and also in the frameworks and governance structures that we develop as well. Human in the loop, I believe it means when there's a human being that is informed of the decisions, and human on the loop is when before the agentic AI or the AI system makes any decision, the human is is involved to ensure to and allow it go to the next stage. I believe that depending on the risk that an AI system has, the risk of the that could occur or the risk scenarios that could be involved in an AI system's functions will determine if you have an AI in a human in the loop or on the loop. However, I'll recommend human on the in the loop. I recommend all these are requirements for any type of AI system that you are deploying. A human being has to be informed. A human being has to be, before a decision is made, a human being has to be consulted and allow it to go to the next stage. I recommend that. But the degree to which you'd have this involvement is what is different, it differs now. However, personally, I would recommend human in the loop, human in the loop. I would recommend different terminologies for those, please. However, I would recommend that we have them every AI system that's been deployed regardless of the risk. Because if you don't have that at the start, over time, you would eventually have to have that because you update your AI systems, there'll be improvements to it, there'll be updates to the features. And as time goes on, the risk that you have for that AI system would increase. And then if you had a human, just human in the loop only before, you'd have human on the loop again because the AI risk, the risk identified with that AI system has increased or has increased or has changed. So you need to ensure that there's human oversight, period. And so it's difficult to give a certain recommendation for, as a blanket recommendation for all AI systems. It's all on a case by case basis. But generally, human oversight is not to be compromised. That's my personal opinion on that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. I agree. I try to say typically when people say human in the loop, I hear a lot of people who develop these technologies. They say, yeah, 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 we do human in the loop or whatever. And they say it very matter of factly, right? But for me,
Right.
I think the human needs to be in the lead, right?
Yes. Right.
Cause just like your example about the bot surgery, it's like some humans should have had some oversight over this. We all know the models drift. They don't always do what you want them to do. But
Mhm.
and then also the person that goes to court, they're not gonna sue the AI, they're gonna sue the company.
Yeah.
Right? They're gonna be mad at the doctors and what they
Right.
did. So it's like you can't abdicate your responsibility to a technology because when you purchase a technology like AI, you're buying risk,
Right. You
right?
are.
Your goal or your task or your responsibility is to manage the risk that you have purchased, right?
Mhm.
So that
Right.
you can get the benefit of the tools without creating problems for yourself and for the individual.
Right. I agree.
So, emoji, if it were the world according to you, and
Yes.
we did everything that you said, this be your wish, right? What would
Mhm.
be your wish for privacy anywhere in the world, whether that be human behavior, technology, or regulation?
My wish for the world would be for privacy to be something that everyone is aware of and everyone has that knowledge and people are aware of the regulations. They might not be aware of the details of it, but be aware that there's some regulation about that takes you of this somewhere. And also that human beings are aware that organizations need to be held responsible for what they do with their data. and that organizations are able to ensure that they build trust in their consumers about what they do with their data, and that they actually are accountable and transparent with it and do what they say they do with it. And also that we don't let technology dictate how we run our lives, but that we actually develop structures in place in our personal lives and in business also, that we develop structures in place where we are able to control that technology. Because right now, if you look at it, the technology is almost controlling us. The technology has been deployed faster than the rules are being developed. So we need to make sure that we don't put the cart before the horse, we put the horse before the cart. So that way we're able to be in control of our data and what happens to it and what gets done with it. Yeah, basically.
Oh, I love that.
But
I'll take that. I like that wish. I like that wish. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really
thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me. I did have a good
But great.
time.
And thank you for indulging me on my philosophical plane.
Not at all. My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm so glad to be on your show. I really appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll be able to talk soon, but I really appreciate you being on the show again. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye. Bye.